Hey there, romance readers and kinky friends. We would love to keep the discussion popping on Instagram. Head over to romance@glance to play with us and recommend our next book. Romance at a glance. Romance at a glance.
What you saying now?
Romance at a glance.
Go ahead, girl.
Season 2.
Season
Season 2. Season 2.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome back to another season of Romance at a Glance. We are at Season 2, Episode 2, and we are tackling J.R. Ward all season. Today bringing you Lover Awakened. I'm your host, Bridget, and with me, as always, is my co-host, Shani. How are you today, Shani?
I'm doing good. Whoop, whoop. Ready for Season 2.
Yes.
Loving Season 2.
Season 2 is coming along splendidly. Who caught last week's episode? Were you as excited as we were to start diving into J.R. Ward? 10 episodes all season long.
I'm so excited, Bridget. I love J.R. Ward. You know how I feel about it. You know how I feel about this week's book. I'm so excited to get into this.
Yes, this week's book we are tackling Zsadist. I say Zsadist because there's a Z, even though I know it's sadist, but I like calling it Zsadist.
Yeah, so I cannot call him sadist. He is forever Zsadist. He's
Okay.
the only one that we pronounce incorrectly, but
I
it's just
agree.
got to be that now.
Yeah, so Zsadist and Bella. If you remember, at the end of the last book, Bella had just been captured by the Lessening Society, and we did not know her fate, and Zsadist was filled with rage and agony over that, because he, obviously, last book, was denying all of his feelings for Bella.
But he had all of the feelings.
All the feelings.
And I was ready for them in this book.
Yes. Oh my goodness. So let's just put us into where we are. This is book 3 of the Black Dagger Brotherhood. Paranormal romance, vampires, gotta be paranormal. And in this book, we are focusing on one of the brothers who has the worst reputation of the bunch. He's got scars, he's got slave bands, everyone thinks that he's murdering females all the time. And I do have to say that not that he didn't kill a female, because he does kill his old mistress, but he really doesn't try to disabuse anyone of the notion that he's the worst.
Yeah.
Even though he's really not.
He
He's
really
really
isn't.
super damaged. He's really got a lot of PTSD. From this book, we get to see inside his mind a little bit and see how much of a sexual repression that he has. Like, even though he was raped for centuries, like, he really doesn't understand how to have sex or how to kiss or what other people like, because everything was forced from him, and he really, like, he calls it, like, floating above himself, and he just, like, wasn't really a part of any of it. And never even ejaculated until Bella. And so it's kind of sad for me that everyone thinks that he's, like, killing females. And even though in the first book, when they accuse him of being the one who killed the females, he says, no, it wasn't me, and gives the evidence about why it wasn't. And they're all like, oh, you're right, we should believe in you. And then in this book, they're so quick to believe he's hurting Bella again.
That's how I feel. Well, in the other book, I feel like they weren't super quick to believe him. He kept saying, like, I didn't do it. And they didn't believe him at first. And then the whole other book, everybody's talking about him like he's this really bad person doing terrible things. But he never really did anything terrible other than, like, maybe coming on to someone a little bit, like, aggressively, but nothing actually ever happening.
Right.
And that was the most that ever happened. So we only get this reputation from him by everybody's opinion that they put in the book.
Because he looks scary because of his scars.
But he's
and
never
he
actually did anything
acts
yet.
scary in the sense that he's constantly verbally, like, threatening people, and he puts off that, because he's a vampire, so he
That
puts
vibe.
off a big,
He's like vampire
fuck you.
bitch face.
Yeah, totally. But yeah, he doesn't, to your point, he doesn't actually really do bad things.
Yeah.
And
He even, like, took care of John Matthews' like bully in this
yeah,
book. I mean,
like,
I
he's
feel
a
like it's a
sweet-
stretch. He's a sweetheart.
And I think it's crazy that they don't believe him, because he just spent the last 6 weeks, like, on a warpath to find her. So it makes no sense to me that they immediately think that he's hurting her when she screams. And the reason she screams is because she can't see him, because her eyes are all fucked up from what that psycho Lesser did.
Yeah, and she's got like salve or some kind of grease across her eyes.
So she can't see, and it's dark, and he's big and standing near her. Anyone would scream. And it's crazy to me. I'm like, he just spent 6 weeks literally, like, eating lessers and ripping them apart and not sleeping and not eating.
Yeah.
And now you believe he's actually attacking her. That, to me, I was like, that doesn't make any sense. You guys suck.
You suck.
You all are the worst. Fury in this book really made me furious.
So like the one thing about any kind of supernatural book or even like superheroes or anything is that sometimes people have superpowers and they discount them in the book, right? So like when Bella screams, a lot of them have like super hearing. So they only hear her scream, but they don't ever hear like what else is going on. There's like they never pick up any other context, which I'm always like kind of like come on. You could have heard him the way he reacted to her or like the way he was helping her afterwards of her screaming or that sort of thing. It's always like, oh, they go to the worst possible thing, but I'm like, you kind of have some super hearing. Like you could have kind of heard that like everything was all right. You know what I mean?
And in the scene right before that, he is like so cautious that Havers is going to respect her and not going to do anything to hurt her or harm her. And then he bathes her body and then he tucks her into his bed and he's watching over her. And I'm like, that makes no sense that you thought that he was attacking her or raping her.
Which just makes it really feel like because he's not attractive, I guess, looking, that's why he gets a bad rap.
Yeah,
really.
I mean, he does have black eyes and like he doesn't ever tell people or disabuse them of like, no, I'm actually not a psycho killer. I mean, a psycho killer of lessers, yes, but not a psycho killer of women.
Yeah. It's kind of like when you like...
bogus. It's bogus, for sure.
You know, when guys think you're a bitch and you just keep letting them think that because you're like, I need them to have the fear, in them so they leave me alone. Like, it's kind of feels like that.
So in case you guys don't know the backstory, so Zsadist was a blood slave. So blood slaves typically back in the sort of medieval times that they talk about were literally someone who was kept for their blood. So they have to feed off the other species as nourishment in addition to eating food. And they were kept for blood. He was also used as a sex slave, which is not always the case. A lot of times they're just for blood. But he was constantly raped by his female mistress and by lots and lots of men that she brought around that she liked to either have watch them together or she liked to like watch them rape him.
Yeah.
So he was getting horrors and horrors and horrors and degradations. And because they have like this insane ability to heal, he like any abuse that they gave to him, he would just heal from by the next day.
Yeah.
So he could always have it visited upon him. And they had to use this like salve to get him hard. So he never was actually excited. He never actually ever had an ejaculation. He was never into the sex. And so she always had to use this salve. So he really doesn't understand his own penis. He calls it it.
Yeah.
Which I think is really sad because it shows that in his mind, he's still like the boy who went through the transition. He never had any of those like fumblings we all go through.
When he has that like conversation with himself, he's like, about what to call it. He's like, dick. Okay. All right. Well, okay. Penis. Cock.
Let's just
go with
dick.
We're going to go with dick.
Yeah.
Okay. You're a dick now.
Yeah. And like the first time he's never like touched it. He doesn't even like to touch it to pee.
Yeah.
And he thinks it's so gross and vile and filthy and that his blood is tainted. And I think it's like a sad, this book actually for me is very hopeful in the sense that he finds someone and they slowly work together to go through their various traumas. But also it's just very sad.
This book, like for me, I feel the same way you do where it feels hopeful. It's like somebody who's gone through something so traumatic can like come back and like be like, it can be redemptive in a way. And they don't necessarily have to not be scarred. But they can get over some of the triggers or work around some of the triggers that they might have. Also, like if I was like the mistress, the one who was like, constantly raping him, and I had to like constantly put like salve on somebody.
How depressing would that be for you?
It's so depressing.
Yeah.
I know that at one point in the book, she's like, I always have to use this on you or whatever. And it's kind of like in my head, I'm like, and that's the hint. Like,
It's not for you.
You can't get it up without this.
Yeah.
Like, maybe this is not for you. You don't find me attractive. Like maybe being raped constantly doesn't do it for my body. My body doesn't like you.
Yeah, and like weirdly, probably because like in all these books, basically all the vampires are good looking.
Yeah.
Even if they're not like, some of them are like astoundingly good looking, but like all of them across the board are pretty good looking. And the crazy thing is that when he transitioned, if she had just approached him in a
healthy,
slightly more consensual, still conniving, still like setting it up.
Yeah.
And maybe even still chaining him up or something. But like if she had set it up in a slightly different way, he might have eventually felt something for her.
Because he was pre-transition.
He woke up after his transition, chained to the bed, getting his tattoos, and she raped him right then.
Yeah.
While the other two guys watched. And he had never even like had a hard penis because pre-trans you can't even get hard.
Yeah.
So it's like he went from being essentially a little boy to a man physically overnight and woke up chained to a bed and tattooed.
And like fucking an older,
Older
mom-like.
Mom, yeah.
like vamp.
Interestingly, when Bella was captured, so the Lessening Society all are impotent, which
Yeah.
I think is kind of an interesting thing to have your sort of overarching villain not have any sexual aggression.
I love it.
I think it's so interesting because almost everyone, and it's a big blanket statement, I know, but let's say 70% of books, there's some threat at some point in one of their novels of sexual aggression, rape,
Yes.
molesting.
All the time.
Even if it doesn't happen, like the possibility is there.
The looming.
And I think it's so interesting that in this book, the big bad guy of the Lessening Society are all impotent, and the Omega rapes them.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of male rape in these books.
A lot of male rape.
And a lot of the male rape is vampires and vampires. It's not like they're getting raped by quote unquote bad guys. They're getting raped by other people of their species.
Yeah. I think, like, I mean, and why shouldn't a book be equal opportunity when it comes to all of this?
Yeah.
Like, it's I like it a lot because it deals with, even like, they talk about John Matthew in this book. He comes in, which is exciting for us because we love John Matthew. But like, even he talks to his doctor about being sexually assaulted and then going to therapy, having to like go to therapy for that. And I like it because a lot of times nobody ever talks about guys having gone through this or having to go to therapy, or like another character saying like, hey, I went to therapy too. Like, you know,
yeah,
it's
Butch
not,
tells him, I went to therapy. I didn't think it was going to help. Maybe it didn't help right then. But then when I thought about what the therapist said, it helped me.
yeah,
Which I think is just generally how therapy works. In the room, you're like, I don't know. And then an hour later, you're like, oh, yeah, that was a good point.
it's good to get that off my chest.
Yeah, I think it's, and I think the way that they talk about it, where, you know, John Matthew doesn't want to tell Tor because he's like, no man would ever let this happen to them.
Yeah.
Which I think is kind of a pervasive thing in culture, that boys think it's something that they should have been able to prevent. But if you're a boy and being raped by a man, how would you prevent that?
How?
It's the same as a girl being raped by a man. You're small.
I mean, girls
you're
and
weaker.
girls
You're-
and boys at a certain age are the same size.
Yeah.
And the same strength and the same like everything.
And he's
So,
pre-transition, so he's especially scrawny and weak. And it's not about your manliness at all. It's literally overpowering. And he held
About
a
someone-
5-inch serrated knife to your neck.
Yeah.
It's like, well, that's anyone could get into that situation, even a very strong man. And I like that
Absolutely.
they talk about that and that she deals with that. I do think in this book in particular, because of Zsadist and John Matthew sort of revealing his thing, it does come up a lot, but I didn't feel like, I felt like they were all like earned scenarios. Like I didn't feel like they just came out of left field.
Yeah.
Like sometimes, like when something's revealed in the backstory, you're like, okay, that doesn't make any sense. Okay, you just use that as like an easy thing. But I feel like in this one, it all worked for the story and the characters.
I do too. And I think we might have read this about J.R. Ward, that she already knew like how the story was going to map out ahead of time. Like when, like she dreamt it.
Yeah, she like dreams each episode.
Like, but I think she dreamt
Or
the
each-
whole
each
thing
series, I
or
mean.
something.
Yeah.
And that's how she's putting it together. And so I like that all these little nuggets that are coming out that work later on in different books and stuff like
Yeah, I
that
had-
is exciting for me.
Such a hard time putting my notes together for this episode because there's a million things that happen to a million characters, and everything is so juicy and leads to so many different things. I mean, even John Matthew and Wellesley and Tor alone have like such a beautiful kindling of their family and how much they're starting to love each other. And like Tor's like, I want to call you son. And he's like, I want that too. And Wellesley loves him and leaves him food. And reading it the first time, I was like, oh, finally John Matthew's going to get a little happiness in his little baby life. Even though he's like 25. And and then of course, spoilers, but of course by the end of the book, Wellesley's dead, Tor's gone, John Matthews all alone, and I was heartbroken because she did such a good job setting that up.
So I've read this book this is probably like my fourth time reading this book, and every time I avoid getting to the part where Wellesley dies. Like, and I know it's coming, I know what happens, and as soon as I'm reading up, I get like this anxiety because it's like once they say it happens. Like, when you hear it in the book or you're reading it, it's like once that page happens, then Wellesley's gone.
Yeah.
But my thing was when I was reading it this time is I felt like I missed something in the story because she gets killed at Revenge's house.
Right.
Going to check on Revenge's mother or the family or pay her respects.
Right.
But she's also married to Tor.
Right.
And so why doesn't she know that Bella is already...
So she does know Bella's alive, but she's going there not to give condolences. She's going there because they're planning the big festival, and she says, I'm not sure if she's receiving because of Bella.
Oh, okay.
But
that's what I misunderstood.
I want to like involve her in the festival or whatever.
Gotcha.
So, and obviously David has been stalking Revenge's house, and then he sees her because he's now found out she's alive, and he sees her and just kills her because she's a vampire.
Yeah.
And he doesn't care, and he just wants to hurt them, and then he kidnaps Sorrel.
Which Sorrel was like John Matthews.
I love Sorrel, and she's like, "Let's I am," and I was like, "The feels," when he smiles at her, and he's like, "Oh."
And she was like, she was like, "Let's I am." She was so willing to be there with him and stuff. And I remember watching like a BuzzFeed video a while back about like people who are deaf, and they were saying that people are not willing to take the time to like write with them on a piece of paper to have a conversation or to get to know them or whatever. And I always remembered that. And so she was like, "Oh, this is a perfect way for us to communicate and whatever." And I was like, oh my God.
And he even said, like, I feel like her equal because I can type, we can talk fast. I mean, the only reason I'm happy that she's gone is that it
Zex
opens up the door for Zex. And without that death and Wellesley's death, I don't know that Zex would have been the trajectory that he went on.
Yeah.
However, I was very sad because I had in my notes, it was just feels, all caps, just like elongated feels. I love them. I want to go back quickly though and talk a little bit about Bella, because one thing about Bella in the last book is that we didn't get, even though we knew she was friends with Mary and lived across the pond from her, and we got to meet her a little bit, and she had those couple interactions with Zsadist. In this book, I really liked how much of a badass she was. Like, she saves that vampire civilian at the beginning, which is what leads to her being freed. So it's not like, even though technically Zsadist comes in and frees her from the hole and the Brotherhood frees her, really she frees herself, because without her, they never would have found her.
Yeah.
And she like takes the beating, and he like carves his name in her belly, and she like, but she's willing to go through all of that to free someone else. And then when Zsadist is like throwing some bullshit at her, like, you don't know your own feelings, she's like, shut the fuck up while I talk. I'm going to tell you about my feelings.
Yeah.
You don't know. You can't tell me about my feelings. And he's like shocked because no one ever like confronts him. And I love that about her, because he is, as we've stated, he is a scary looking and scary emoting mofo.
Yeah.
Even though he's not as scary with her. And she also talks to her brother, and she's like, I will run away. Like, if you put me in seclusion, like, I am out, and we are no longer family. And then later, she's the one who ends up killing David and saves Zsadist because he goes in half-cocked.
Yo.
So she saves him and, like, calls David over and is like, come hug me, and then blows his motherfucking brains out and stakes him. And I was like, get his ass, girl.
So, first of all, I just want you listeners to know how Bridget just like punched her fist like she was gonna fight so hard. Two, that moment for me was actually so amazing and beautiful, because she like calls him over and like, David, David, David. And she could have like shot him earlier or whatever, but she actually like cradled him and held him and like held that moment strong before like
she wanted to make sure that she killed him. She wanted to make sure she didn't just like wound him.
Yeah. And so I was just like, that is some gangsta ass
And then
shit.
she's like, Zsadist, focus. How do I kill him? In the sternum, right? Okay.
Okay. And he's like,
I don't want to hear none of your nonsense.
And he was like, no, go away, run away.
She's like, shut the fuck up.
Shut the
you
fuck
can barely
up.
walk. And then she gives him her wrist, and she's like, I don't care if you like me. You're going to drink this right now because I can't carry fury in my own.
I was just like, this is a gangster moment. Like, I was I was with her.
And
there.
and even at the end, when he's telling her, like, when they have that sex and she's like, I knew this was like goodbye, and she
Yeah.
goes back to Revenge's house and with Marissa and everything, and then she decides that she's gonna leave Caldwell. She is like, hey, like, I love you, but I do wish I never met you, not for the reason you think, but because like my heart is broken. And she bounces. Like, she's not she's not gonna stay around for that treatment.
But
and
he also
I really liked that about her.
I mean, she was saying that, but I felt like she was waiting for him to be like,
She
no.
She 100% was hoping.
Yeah.
And
then,
I think hope is nice, though.
I was just kind of like, at that moment, he was doing too much. He was, oh, no, be with Fury, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted her to be a more hardcore deuces. Just be like, I'm out, I'm bouncing out. And then, like, she comes back to tell him that she's pregnant. And I was, like, a little bit like, nah, he don't deserve that. Nah, man. He's like, I'm letting her to read for you.
And then you realize that the pregnancy is 18 months.
I know.
And that a lot of them die. And you're like, okay, no, she needed help. she can't do that baby thing by herself.
It's like an elephant.
That's fucking crazy. I highlighted that and I was just like, no.
Bridget, can you imagine 18
10 months? I mean, I did 18 months of pregnancy between the two. That's too many.
But you had crazy in your eyes.
I had a little break. I had a little break in between. But I cannot. 18 months.
Bridget,
That's a year and a half.
You had crazy in your eyes. By the
All
time
every day.
it was time for Molly to come out, you looked like you were going to punch Molly when she got out just for being so rude.
You better get out. Oh, you want to be a week late? Let's see who's funny now. I was crazy. 18 months is just batshit crazy.
That is an elephant. I think an elephant's like 2 years or 18 months or something like that.
Yeah, madness. I have a question for you, Shawnee.
Yeah.
Do you care about the Lessers or their storylines ever?
I don't give a fuck about the Lessers. I don't give a shit about them. She writes way too much about them. I don't care what they're doing. I don't care about their interpersonal skills. I don't care about who gets raped by which Lesser and the Omega gets somebody in the booty. I don't give a fuck.
I totally agree. I actually feel like these books don't need it. I feel like you could just delete it all from the books and we would never need to know.
No. Insert bad guy. Bad guy coming. Bad guy coming. Bad guy kill. That's all I need to hear.
In this book, so I read them for this podcast.
Yeah.
When I read these on my own, I always skip those chapters completely. I don't even look at them. I'm like, oh, Lesser chapter. Boop. Boop. I did read them for this podcast because I was like, well, maybe I've been missing something all this time.
Yeah.
I did think that O as a Lesser was more interesting than typical Lessers because typically they're just like, I want to kill all vampires and I serve the Omega and, just bad guy nonsense. And I'm like, whatever. In this one, I did think he was a little bit more interesting because he was like, oh, I don't care about the Lessening Society. I only care about her. So he was just a little bit different of the typical Lesser villain.
Yeah.
And yet, didn't care. Could have skipped it.
Yeah. I mean, this is the second time around that I've read the lessening chapters and whatnot. And the way they work in audio is that the lessening stuff actually doesn't happen at the top of a chapter. It doesn't change to a new chapter when the lessening starts. It'll start like mid in the center. So sometimes I'm listening, and then I'm like, oh wait, we're at the Omega now. We're at the Lessers thing now. I'm like, how did I get here? Rewind. But like, I find that his obsession with Bella is slightly interesting, and what he's willing to do, and why he wants her to be his wife, which is like this archetype. He can't have sex with her. So, and you know that he had another woman in the past who looked just like her. So he's using her to replace somebody, that he already, I think, also killed or
it seems
hurt.
like he killed.
Yeah, in the past. So she kind of serves this purpose, which is interesting. So it's not just like, oh, I got to kill her. And he's willing to do anything to keep her because he lies to like his boss and
lies to the Omega.
Yeah, he kills the Lesser that finds
Lesser.
out about him, you or something. I forget what letter he is, but so he's willing to do a lot to get her back. So the stakes are high. So I liked that there was that driving force behind the stakes, even for them like finding out about them buying apples for their festival, or so they can figure out where they are and that sort of thing. So it is a slightly interesting to me, and by slightly I mean like 1%. Interesting to me as to how they're finding out where the Brotherhood was. The first two times I read this, I didn't know how the Lessers found them or whatever because I skipped through all of that.
Let us know what you think. If you're a Patreon, you can join our private Discord group. where we talk about all this stuff, and you can let us know. You can also just drop us a comment on Instagram, hop on the website, leave a comment. We're on all the socials. We're on all the things. Let us know. Romance at Glance.
Romance at Glance.
At Glance. Yeah, let us know. Because maybe some of you are like, no, I need to know all about the Lessening Society. And you know what? More power to you if you care about it.
I really need to know if people are reading this, because you and I didn't even know each other when we read these books, and both of us skipped that shit.
All right, let's take a quick break, and we'll be right back.
Hello, best friends. Thank you for being loyal listeners of Romance at a Glance. We're so happy to have you. If you'd like to support us further, head over to Patreon, where you can become one of our patrons. We've got a lot of great perks, such as merch and a super secret discussion group where Bridget and I talk to you directly about all things romance and all things nasty. So come on over. And now, back to our show.
Okay, this is a very serious thing. Why was there no threesome mating developed between Fury, Zsadist, and Bella? I at one point was like, I could see it. Because they both are bonding with her.
Absolutely.
But she so does not care about Fury. And I was like, okay, fine. You're not going that way, but...
And they keep trying to pawn Fury off on her.
I feel bad for Fury, honestly. Even though I didn't really love a lot of the things he did in this book, I feel very bad because he clearly has feelings for her and she just could give a fuck about him as a mate. Yeah. I mean, she likes him as a person, but
he was always second, not even any choice.
Zsadist is why don't you go feed Fury? Yeah. Why don't you let Fury feed you? And she's like, you know how insulting that is to just ask me to feed someone else? But
I also feel like even after she was with him and stuff, Fury was still a little bit puppy dogging. I might still take the leftovers. You know what I mean? And I was like, oh. Yeah. This is your twin brother. You guys he saved you, Fury saved you from, whatever. And a little bit felt like Zsadist felt he owed, something nice to Fury.
I think he did. And he even says in the book, you've been trying to keep me together for too long. You have to let go. You have to go and do your own thing. By the end, when they're laying in the bed together, he's like, okay, I'm going to try and give you less to worry about because this is killing you. And I want you to be happy and you should be happy and you're not.
Yeah.
Which I think was actually kind of lovely. And I can't even imagine,
it was so sweet.
For hundreds of years having a brother who you desperately want to connect to and you want to help and love, who's so damaged. And when he finally, lets you in and tells you he loves you. And I can't even imagine. I was emotional over that part. I was like...
I like when they're, cuddling.
When they're cuddling. I was just like... When he sings to him and he thought it was an angel, I was just like...
I mean, it was all the feels. Because when you think about it, right? So I used to be a postpartum doula, and for a while my specialty was multiples, right? So I wanted to become specifically a doula for multiples. And when you think about twins, it's they've been in the womb together. They have this bond. And when you see them in the crib together after they're born, it is the cutest thing you've ever seen. They'll curl around each other. They'll hold each other's hands. They still are connecting. And Fury lost Zsadist when he was very young and has been looking for him, searching for him for years and years and years and years just to get back to that cradle spot of intertwine. Mm-hmm. And I just thought, oh my God, I can't do this. This is too much for my new emotionally open heart.
I agree.
I'm in my 30s and getting in touch with my feelings, and now everything just hurts and feels so heavy.
Yeah, and I felt that I think their story is sad, but also it was very beautifully written. And at the end of this book, I felt like there was hope that they were going to come to a better place. Because the one thing I liked about the ending, there were 8 endings, but one thing I liked about the ending was that, as we talked about before, it's all about the actions. Walking that motherfucking walk.
Yeah.
It's not about talking a good game, saying I'm going to change, saying I'm going to do all these things. He literally was I was going to wait, not too long because I didn't want you to be with another guy, but yeah. I was going to wait until I was someone you could be proud to be with, until I learned to read, until I he started eating. So he was putting on weight and was healthy, and he was teaching the young, how to be warriors. And he was a part of the community of the Brotherhood mansion. And then he was going to approach her and and be her friend. And he even at that point is like, I know you don't love me and you don't want to like, but I thought maybe we could be friends and I could be in your life that way. And that I liked because
Yeah.
there are so many times in I feel like in any media, but especially in romantic stories and rom-coms and romantic books where the main woman forgets everything, all the evidence, all the bad things, and it's like, it'll all be fine because you told me you love me. And I'm like, yeah, except for you live in different states and you have all these problems and he's a mean guy and he treats you like shit and whatever.
Yeah.
But and you're like, I liked that he did the work on himself. I liked it.
I do too. I'm with you on that, where it's like walk the walk, talk the talk. And then like, you know, I also think like it's cool that he is like, I want to be near you in your life. We may not be together, but you didn't do nothing to cause this. I did. And so this is what I've earned. I've earned to not necessarily be considered to be part of your life, to not have that entitlement that's like, take me back.
Yeah. That like, I'm bonded to you, so you're going to marry me.
Which the one thing I also love about males, Zsadist is my favorite rage male. But like, or rage demon, basically. But the thing I love is that in these books, the women do not bond. The males bond, right? So the males are inclined, once they bond, they will get super protective of their female. Their female could go fuck 10 other dudes.
Yeah.
Like they're not, they're not locked in.
Like, you got to earn this because I have bounce.
Exactly.
And I'm fine with it.
Which I love, because it's like the guys are bonded, but they still got to do the work. It's not like she's just there because her emotions and hormones have taken over.
Right.
So I do love that about this book, because I feel like in general in life, women are always portrayed the other way, that we always bond and then we can even be with an idiot but we're still there and da 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 da. So I do enjoy that he's like, yo, you could be with other fools and you could you could be doing this all this other stuff or whatever. She's like, yeah, I could be.
Well, that leads me into the kneading. So this is our first kneading that we've had. Ooh. I think, right?
Yeah, I think this is the first kneading.
This is the first kneading that we've had. Let's talk about it. First of all, nasty. Would not want the pain necessarily, but I can be down for 16 hours of orgasms. And just fucking and feeding.
I want to fucking feed on a daily basis.
I mean, I think the act of feeding is the way she describes it and the way I imagine it is so sensual. It's like somebody pounding into you and you're like gulping like they're like, oh, mama.
I mean, like,
sign me the fuck
I've
up.
never like sucked somebody's blood, but like,
I hope not. It's unhygienic.
We got tested. No, like I've never sucked someone's blood, but the act of like, if you've ever been fucking and having someone literally like pushing food into your mouth at the same time, whether it be fruit or something like that, that shit is hot as fuck.
No, I have not ever had someone doing that. Am I missing it?
Yes. You are missing.
I've had like food involved before or after, but I've never had food involved while there's a P in the V.
No. A P in the V and something being shoved in your mouth at the same time. It hits an oral fixation. It explodes your brain.
I mean, I guess I've had like fingers in my mouth or like another penis in my mouth at the same time.
But
not food. But like food. A really good chocolate.
Yes,
or like
a really good chocolate. Strawberries, really good.
Okay.
Like pick something you like.
Hubs,
you know what I mean?
If you're listening, I know you're not, but if you were, you would know this is happening.
This needs to
happen. But instead, I will send you a text message and let you know.
Now, like, I'm all about like multiple streams of
sensory, tactile,
taste. I need like 3 to explode my brain.
Okay.
Or whatever. But like, so the idea of like the kneading of I'm like fucking and eating and whatever already sets my brain into like all tingle mode.
Okay.
Like,
and she describes his penis as being just like an arm. And I was like, you know what? You know what's interesting about that? Let me tell you. First of all, she's a vampire, so she can heal all wounds. So even if he rips her up a little bit, she's going to be fine in like 10 minutes.
She's going to be fine.
Secondly, when I read those things, I'm like, but would you really want something that's like 14? No, you don't.
No.
When you see those people on like things like riding like one of those dragon dildos that's, 15 inches long and 5 inches wide, I'm like, that's like my child coming out. It's a fucking horror show. I know I was there. I did not love it all the time. I feel like 9. You know what I mean? Like a healthy 9, 6 to 9.
Honestly,
a great range. And if you can work it, then
I
we're all
need 6.
I do too.
6
6 is great.
is perfect.
But I'm saying 9 is like, once you're bigger
Max.
than that, it's like, what are we doing here? What is it that we're doing here?
At 9, I am breathing. I am doing like yoga exercises, tantra breathing.
Well, and
like,
the lead up to it has to be just devastating for me.
Yeah.
You know, because you gotta like
you gotta
get
just be
everything
pouring.
loosened.
You gotta be. I gotta be pouring,
yeah,
ready to
yeah,
go.
ready.
Like, there's no like, are you? Let me just try to shove it in there and see what's happening. Oh no, you're not ready. Like, there's none
But
of that.
again, it's paranormal, so I'm going to tell you again. I'll forgive many, many things in paranormal because I'm like, she's a vampire. She can just drink a little bit of his blood. Bam, she's healed.
Maybe they
1
got
second.
bigger, I don't know, vagina cavities.
I mean, clearly all the dudes are hung, so they
never
clearly
talk
can
about
take a
the
bigger
girl,
dick.
though. They always talk about the size of the guy's dick, but they never talk. No book ever talks about the size of a girl's like vagina cavity.
I mean, they
like,
have an 18-month gestation, so it's clearly their anatomy. And they talk about the anatomy being different, the different hearts and different. So I'm assuming that they have a different capacity to take a D.
I mean,
Because it has to be, because it's different anatomy. Again, they're different species. I accept all things. I'm just letting you know if someone came at me with like a 14-inch dick, I'd be like, put that shit away.
it's not Bridget. Let me tell you right now. I will. There was one guy that came at me with something that was probably close to like a 9 or whatever. And I immediately just about faced and left. I was like, abso-fucking-lutely not. Not a chance in hell. There's no coming back from that. I will not survive. Like,
I was like, I could do it.
I never saw him again.
I don't know that I would want to be doing it all the time. But I'm talking about 14 inches. 9, I'd be like, okay, let's get crazy.
9, I'm like, no.
Let me just drink a quick scotch and let me just go.
I'm tiny. Like,
I also don't want to ever give a blowjob to someone whose penis is that big.
no.
There's
Because
too much in there.
that's when you can't put it all in there.
That's
when
like
you're
you do
licking
two
the
hands
sides.
on there and you just lick the top like a popsicle.
Like a popsicle. You're licking the sides, looking around it, like, ooh,
If
making
anyone
noises.
has misophonia, I apologize for that slurping sound I just made. Let's talk about dicks.
Let's talk about dicks, baby.
And revenge. Okay,
I
so
love
revenge.
revenge.
And
love
I
revenge.
love him. By the time we get to his book, I am panting for it. In this book, however, I forgot how much of a dick he starts out at the beginning. Like, he's such a misogynist who is talking about how Bella has to be in seclusion and yada yada and all this nonsense. And then it turns out he's half sympath. So
Yeah.
you got problems, brah.
You got a different daddy?
Got a different daddy.
Yeah.
And also, he is a drug dealer and a pimp
Yeah.
and runs all these illegal things.
I'm not hearing any negatives.
And he also is impotent. So I'm like, you know what? You are not a catch.
Is
And
he?
you need
He's
to back the
forcibly
fuck off, Bella.
impotent, right? He
does it to
keeps
himself.
Yeah.
So he shoots himself up with dopamine to repress the sympath side so that he can like function in the world without basically like fucking with everyone's minds. And at this point in the book, we really don't know that much about sympaths. Like, this is the first look into the sympath that we get.
Yeah.
I think it's super intriguing. I really like in future books when they explore the different ways that sympaths work and how their brains work. I think it's super cool.
But I guess it's like not okay to be a sympath because he's
And
hiding it
Right.
like crazy. And so when Fury finds out, he's like,
Big deal.
It is. It's like a big deal. And there's like, it's like this weird kind of like mutual.
It's
like,
a mutual, like, I know you're
I
a
have
drug
something
addict,
on you, and
I can
got something on you.
totally.
Yeah.
Totally. But one thing I was struck by more in this, because again, I had forgotten how much of a dick he was, but I was struck by how lonely he is. And when Marissa comes over, like he says in his like mental thing that he could easily like take advantage of her, and she's someone that he would want to like break, and if his sympath side was up, like he would want to like overpower her and dominate her and all this other stuff. But that he, treats her with respect and makes sure he has his dopamine in his system and stuff, and that he realizes that like he's all alone, like no one knows the real him, and I just think that's so sad.
It is. It is really sad.
But also, like, stop being so mean to Bella, and then you wouldn't be so alone.
Also, like, I mean, it was annoying, like, how he was to Bella.
Yeah.
Like, I'm going to cloister her away and, like,
Nonsense.
make her, not be able to leave the house. And I'm going to try to trick her into coming home. And Bella's like, I see through you. You're going to not let me leave again. That annoyed me. But in general, I like Revenge. I like the setup for him because he did have peaks, like moments where you could peek in and see, a better nature. Like when he warns Fury against using heroin, or, he's like, look, man,
Yeah.
I know I'll get it for you. That's my job. I'm a drug dealer. But
Right. And he takes care of his mom and
yeah, like so there was redemptive qualities there. So
agree.
I was like, I'm here for it. Let's
here
see
for it.
more.
And like I love the sable coat and the pimp cane and
Yeah.
the Bentley and like just his swagger. I'm like, I'm here for the swag.
Yeah.
I'm here for the swag.
Yeah.
In real life, I don't know if I'd like you, but I'm here for it.
And a man with a cane, he could hit you with that cane real nice on the ass. You know what I'm saying? Pow, pow.
Pow, pow.
Consensually, of course.
Yes, of course. There's a couple other really cute moments that I would like to bring up.
Please
One
bring them up.
is when Fury and all the brothers realize that his eyes are golden. I was like, and they're like, welcome back, brother. And everyone's touching his shoulders. I was like, the Brotherhood. It's so beautiful.
It's so funny though too because like Zsadist to me doesn't feel like the most uber touchy of a fella. So when everybody's like touching him and whatever, like in my mind I'm kind of like feeling like the like okay guys.
But I read it the opposite way, that this was the first time that he was like that the touch didn't make him uncomfortable, that he felt that warmth and was able to feel that warmth and that togetherness and connection. So I actually felt like
I think that's actually what it was, like what you just described is, but like me as like a non-hugger, like like had that feeling where it's like, oh, so nice. But I did think it was beautiful that he like was getting in touch with his like, you know, emotions and his like his more of a touchy side. Like I feel very kindred to that, in that like in the last, you know, year and a half or 2 years I've been trying to get really in touch with my like emotional side and my loving side and my connective side, and I'm way more affectionate than I ever was in life now. Like stuff that would have pissed me off later, like having someone's arm around my neck, I hated that feeling always. Now it doesn't bother me. So I'm like, there's all these little things that used to just like irk me that I'm like, oh, okay. Even people like hug me after the shows, after I have explicitly just said I'm not a hugger. On stage, they'll come up to me and like bear hug me within like 60 seconds of me walking off the stage. And I'm always like, I used to just be like, oh, but now I just like lean into it. Yeah. And I hug people. I started hugging people like their mom. Like I'll put my hand on the back of their head, like and hold them really tightly. And you would think that like this would be really weird and awkward, but people just cry. Like at this point, I've had so many people cry on me, Bridget, that I don't know I've just met or whatever, just from hugging them like this. And you just don't think about it. Nobody hugs you like that and cradles you in their arms.
I'm glad that you don't do that to me, because if you did that to me, I'd be really fucking weirded
Bridget,
out.
I wouldn't do it to you because you were not that person.
I mean, you hug me, which I noticed that you now do more than you used to, but you hugged me today when I saw you. But yeah, if you cradled the back of my head, I'd be like, what's happening?
Now next time I hug you, I'm gonna cradle you.
But I do hear what you're saying. And I do think, I mean, to your point about growth and working on something and actively trying to overcome something, I think it in general kind of showcases that someone like Zsadist can overcome things. Because I feel like sometimes things aren't earned in books and they happen way too fast. Like, oh, someone's vag is a miracle cure-all, and all of a sudden they're fucking fine. And like, you know, see Gentleman Sinner as an example for that. And it is nice that it was a progression.
Yeah.
And not a quick solution. One of the many epilogues that I thought was cute was when you see it from the point of view of one of the kids in training, and he sees Zsadist like beating up that punching bag and like going so fast, and he's like, oh Jesus, that guy's a stone cold killer. And then Bella and Nala walk in, and he's immediately like cooing at her, and she falls asleep on his chest. And the guy's like, wait, what? Like, and you're like, oh my God, he loves his young. How cute. I also like that they call them their young. I think that's kind of adorable.
But I also love about that scene specifically is that you can have somebody, so there is something, I think we've even talked about this before, where someone in life is like a badass, but they are a softie for you. Like you see them go to work and they will crush people around them. They do business like crazy. You know what I mean? Like they are the beast out in the streets. And when they come to you, you are their soft place. Yeah. Like there's something so yummy about that feeling.
I 100% agree. Speaking of yummy.
Yummy.
I really love the Vicious and Butch friendship. I've loved it from the moment Butch gets introduced in book 1. I like his character so much because part A, because he's like kind of a gruff cop, like no nonsense, which I enjoy. Also because he's kind of our window into the world. So many things get explained to us because they're being explained to him.
Yeah.
Or he's questioning why something is some way that I'm like, wait, why is it that way? And then the characters explain it to him as they're explaining it to us, which I really like that style of writing and way of storytelling. I also just love the kind of like homoerotic, like best, like beyond best friends. Like they are like almost like halves of a whole sort of friendship that they have. Even after the meeting when Fury, Vicious, and Butch are all in the bed together, like naked because they just like couldn't take it anymore. Fury's like, oh, I don't want to be around two guys, and Butch just like doesn't try to get away from Vicious. He just covers him with it says that he covers them both with the same blanket.
Yeah,
I just love that friendship. And when V feeds him his blood and then like holds him while he's just like going crazy and is like, don't throw it up, hold it down.
Yeah.
And then he like has this blinding orgasm and V's like not even fazed by that. He's just like, I got you. Stay with me. And I'm just like, I was like, oh my God, what is happening?
That was such
so much is happening. And like they're teasing that like V's the kinky one. And I'm like, what kind? Tell me what
What's
kind.
the king?
Tell me.
And Butch, even afterwards, I mean, he was like, he was not happy that he got held down or whatever, but he like orgasmed. And after that, he wasn't like, what the fuck, man, I'm gonna beat your ass. He was just like,
he's just like, next time I'd prefer a choice.
yeah.
I'd still drink it, but I want to choose.
I want to choose.
Yeah, totally.
So it's like, I did, that was really awesome.
And speaking of Butch, I was a little bit confused, I guess, by him rebuffing Marissa because he hasn't seen her in months and months. In the last book, he went to her house and asked to see her, and he was turned away by the butler or the Duggan. And in this one, he sees her in real life, and she's like, will you come and call on me? And like she asks him to come see her, and he's like this. And in his mind, I know he's like wrapped up in his own shit, and he's like, I asked once before, and she like turned me away. And I'm like, yeah, but she's asking right now, and you're in love with her. Like, what are you doing? Did you feel like that was weird?
I did.
Or did you get it?
Because I don't know if she ever knew that he came.
She doesn't. We find out in the next book, or maybe the book after that. She doesn't know.
So she doesn't know.
Spoiler for the future books. But we do find out in the future that she did not know.
Yeah, so he came, and he thinks that she turned him away.
Right.
And I think now, like, his pride is hurt. Like, what game are you playing with me now? You're like, will you call on me? He's like, dude, you just turned me away when I came with my heart on my sleeve. So I understand why he's like, nah.
Okay, that makes sense from that point of view. Like,
but
he's like, you're playing games with my heart because I'm a human or
so
whatever.
it's a setup for that misunderstanding, Gotcha.
Like, gotta have a misunderstanding.
Yeah.
Because they gotta have a love story later.
There's like 20 books. There's
20 books. I mean, these books, one thing I love about her writing style is like she's setting up so many stories at the same time. So like you already know like Butch and Marissa are gonna have a book.
Yeah.
Like eventually John Matthew will go through his transition and probably have a book. Fury has to have a book. Like there's so many different characters that we're already invested in. Like Butch and like V's got to have a book. Like what's going on with him? So one thing I really love about J.R. Ward's writing style is that she's constantly developing multiple different subplots. So a lot of books have like the A couple and the B couple. She has the A couple and then she has the B couple, but then she has like C, D, E, and F that are all starting. So by the time you get to their books, 6 or 7 books later, you're so invested in those characters. And I just love that about the Brotherhood.
Also, the one thing I didn't realize until recently is how she spaces out the new characters coming in. So in my mind, like Quinn and Blaylock already were in the books, but they're not in the books yet.
Yeah.
But I love those characters later on. So she introduces them at some point, and they just become part of the Brotherhood and part of the relationships I'm waiting to see happen.
Yeah, and we've heard Blaylock's name in this book because he said his name one time to John Matthew, but we haven't actually learned anything else about him except for that he has red hair.
So I'm very I'm like, oh man, she really knows how to like get you like just little drops here and there, and that's how she's got this book series going like for the massive amount of books that we cannot even read all of them in this podcast like number of books. So yeah, it's really cool. And also like we've said before, but like looking at J.R. Ward, reading about her, Wikipediaing her, looking at her website, you just would not, like, judging a book by its cover, you would not see this book series necessarily coming out of this woman.
I agree.
She's like a Kentucky Derby, like
Going big hats,
big
lots
hats.
of jewels.
Yeah, like socialite.
She says she's very type A and like runs all the time. And then she's got this rich vampire inner dream life happening.
Yes, and it's just so interesting to me because you know, if you put like 10 people in a room and her as well, she would probably be the last person I would choose to have written this series. And I just love about how they listen to gangster rap and how they, like, you know, the way they talk, and they're supposed to be all badass and stuff, and she's just like this cute little socialite. Like, I'm for it. It just, I love when people like surprise me, and I'm excited for it. So it's just, I don't know, I had to put that out there. It's very interesting.
Well, speaking of badasses, what do you think about our heroine?
Ooh, okay. So I went back and forth between a 4 and a 5.
Okay.
But I think I settled on a 5 because the moment where she cradled the lesser and then killed him, I thought super badass.
Very
I was
badass.
just like, OMG, you cradled like your abuser so that you could murder him. I support you. And the other thing I liked about her was that she allowed Zsadist to be triggered and to have his triggered, and she was always very kind of accepting and nurturing of him in those moments that were super vulnerable. So,
Yeah, I agree. I said I give her a 5. I love that she like calls him out for telling her what she's thinking or feeling instead of listening to what she's saying. But I also like that she respects his boundaries. She respects like that, you know, like after he says you can't be on top, she's like, okay, no problem. Like she sort of lets him know, like, I'll go as slowly as you want or touch you how, you know, like I want you to feel comfortable and be in this with me, you know?
Yeah.
And also like she saves that civilian, she kills David. She's just dope. And she like protects her own feelings and like is like, sorry, if you're not gonna treat me right, I'm the fuck out of here.
Also,
So.
if a guy says to me like, "Oh, I don't really want you to be on top," in my mind I'm like, "Yay!" Because that is a whole lot of work. Whenever I'm on top, I'm like, "Well, I'm definitely not orgasming in this position."
Oh,
It's just-
really?
it's-
I orgasm better in that position.
no, I don't. Like for me,
Oh.
it's too much.
Because I can rub the like
You
my
can?
clit on like where I need to.
Well, the thing is, it feels really good. However, I just can't make it there because I'm too focused on making on like the action,
churn?
Yeah, the churn of it all.
Oh, I
so
love
for
it.
me, the like not being on top, doggy style is actually my favorite. That's
Doggy
like
style
if we
is
finishing
everyone's
that,
favorite.
if we're finishing,
Yeah, there's a reason why animals have it down.
have it down. Like it's a finisher move. It's like we
Yeah.
can play, but when I'm like I'm done, I want to go watch it. You know what I mean? It's Law and Order time. I need this to wrap up. I just turn, flip around, and he's like no, and I'm like finish up.
Yeah, because like no guy can last all that long in doggy style.
No, not at all. They can't conquer that ass. I'm saying, and I have a lot of ass. So,
Well, what did you think about Zsadist? What was your hero rating?
well, what did you think about Zsadist?
I gave him a 5. I like him a lot. My favorite part about him is that he's like, in a lot of ways, he's just so sheltered and confused. Like all the time that he's being mean to people, most of the time it's because he doesn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how to feel. And he never learned any of those emotional skills that people learn because he was literally chained in a basement being like raped and molested and fed from for hundreds of years, not just like a year. It was for a like immense amount of time.
Yeah.
So I really like that. And
McDreamy to McSteamy.
I like that I just like him. I like him. I think he's supposed to be McSteamy, but I think he's McDreamy underneath all of his gruffness. Because he just like wants to like lay between her legs and eat her out all day and make her feel good. And
Yeah.
he like calls her Nala and wants to love her and cherish her.
Yeah.
I think he's really not a McSteamy. And their sex is very vanilla and loving
Yeah.
and gentle. It's not like he's not like giving her the business. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not giving her the nasty.
Yeah. I gave him a 4.
Okay.
Because I wrote that he's my favorite rage beast. He's probably like the first rage beast kind of character that I've ever been introduced to and I think a lot of books copy J.R. Ward. But I like I love the way that he fucks her during her kneading. Like I just love how that goes down. I know they had some issues here or there, but there was just like a scene where he was just going, and I was like, yes, let's go. And then he goes from that, and he's so sweet to her, and it's like it's basically like whatever you need, whatever she needs, he will like give her. So I really love that. For me, sometimes a lot of like the past angst and stuff gets in the way, and that's probably why I gave him a 4 instead of a total of 5. But I I wrote that he's a McDreamy. Same way, because he's like super loving. He has that gruff exterior, but then I did say he's a McSteamy in the sheets. Okay, because I was like, he gave it to her. He went to Pound Town.
He did go to Pound Town. He was at Pound Town.
You know, and then I said that the sex was vanilla, but it had a primal element to it for me, which is like for me my kink. So whenever things are a little animalistic in their nature, I'm like, yes, that's the business. Give her the business.
I said that they were vanilla and very emotional because they were like very connected.
They were. It's kind of like that when you get fucked out of your mind, but he's looking you in your dead in your eyes, and you be like,
you start crying a little.
Yes, you start crying a little, and you be like, yo, what? You don't know what happened. Yeah. Your ancestors shaking. Calling out. They're singing for you, like, you know. Yes. And then afterwards, you're cuddling, and you're just like, the aftershocks are just going, and you're just like,
I will never. Do I have to speak again today, or am I supposed to be a human being, or because I'm floating on cloud
I'm floating. Work canceled. Everything canceled. Cancel all my plans. Assistant, cancel my plans.
Google, cancel my plans. Alexa.
So yeah, that's how I felt about it.
What was your favorite quote? Did you have a good one for this one?
I did have a favorite quote. I had 2 favorite quotes.
Ooh, Shawnee joining Team Bridget with the 2 quotes.
I know, I did. I was like, Bridget always has 2 quotes. So mine was just like something I just thought was indicative of how he was, which she asked him, is it true you cleaned my house? And he was like, yes. And she's like, I'm going to hug you now. And I just thought that was really so sweet because like, you know, in life I have those moments where there's a certain person I'm like, can I hug you? I just really want to hug you.
I'm gonna hug you to show how much this means to me. And
yes,
I thought that scene was really cute. I really liked Bella. This is Bella and Zsadist. And Zsadist says, I think you're confused. He looked down at the floor. You have no idea what you're saying right now. You arrogant bastard, she snapped. Z's head shot up. Well, wasn't that a slap in the ass number 2? Excuse me? Do us both a favor and don't try to think for me, okay? Because you're going to get it wrong every damn time. And I was like,
snaps, girl.
Snaps, girl. Snaps. I don't know if you caught this line.
Yeah.
I never saw it before. This time I read it, but it wasn't Donald Trump rent-a-royalty when they were describing the mansion when John Matthew first went. And I was just like, that is hysterical. I mean, these books came out a long time ago. Yeah. But I just like that description of Donald Trump. Rent-a-royalty.
Okay, so then my second favorite line is Zsadist. Bella's like, you know, after him a little bit, and Zsadist is like, do you just want me to fuck you, Bella? Because that's all I've got in me. And I was like on the other end of the book going like, yes, she just wants you to like fuck her. Like
she keeps saying that.
She keeps saying it. It's like the Jamaican song where it's like, if she says she wants it, if she says she needs, don't you keep her waiting. Give it to her, please.
I mean, she literally says, I know it'll be rough. I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that. Like
I know it'll be from behind. I'm fine with that.
I consent.
I am so wet. Put the D in me, please.
I'm like, does she need to spell it out for you? What needs to happen here?
Yep.
Fuck her.
Yeah. My second one, because the other one was not really a real one. It was just a funny one.
I see.
My second one is, one by one, they reached out and touched him, their big hands gently on his shoulders. Welcome back, my brother, Fury whispered. And I was like, they love him. Yeah. I also like how his eyes go black when he's like fighting, and then he sees her, they turn back, which I think is nice.
That's really lovely.
Because don't you want someone who looks at you and like, essentially they're like, the goodness of their soul shines through their eyes because of you.
There's nothing better than when somebody looks at you with like love and devotion.
Yeah.
Or like they can't believe that like you are theirs. Yeah. Or like, you know, like you're just like, so nice.
I had a favorite review. So my favorite review is from Goodreads. It was Lisa. And her review was 5 Zsadist stars. if I was chosen to drop the F-bomb in any review, this book would be it. I loved this book. If I haven't quite made myself clear yet, then let me tell you, I have an unhealthy fixation on all things Brotherhood. This is so far my favorite book of the series, and if possible, I'm more addicted than ever. Zsadist is the ultimate alpha kingdom of vampires. Broken, destroyed, scarred, damaged, dark, dangerous, and I loved him. I was like, yeah.
My favorite review was from somebody named Wendy, who managed to get like this really cute icon on her Audible that's like this like outline of a woman hula hooping, which I'm just like, respects. I like this. This is a great icon for Audible. But she said, my favorite book so far. This book centers on Z, who is the darkest character of the Brotherhood so far. Because of my growing curiosity of Z in the previous books, I was looking forward to getting into the story. I was not disappointed. Ward tackled very strong emotional and physical traumatic subjects very well. It's a great story. My respect to Ward is growing as a writer because she forces her characters to grow and confront their inner demons. She doesn't chicken out by grazing over obvious social issues. She does it very subtly. No preaching to the reader behind her characters. Very solid series. She goes on a little bit more about the narrator, but that's basically the gist of it. And I think like I like this review because she nailed what I did not like about Alicia Rye's The Right Swipe, where like every social issue was thrown at you very preachingly. Mm-hmm. And I like J.I. Ward because she's dealing with very social issues, and they just organically go through them as characters versus having this like outer voice talking about it, or every time you put on a condom, they're like, is there consent? You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, and all the fun is gone.
Yeah.
Or whatnot. So I thought this review kind of nailed that on the head.
Well, I think your answer is pretty obvious, but would you recommend this book, Shawnee?
Oh, I'd recommend this book, Bridget. I recommend this book to your mama, your grandmama, your nieces, if they're over 18.
Over 18?
I started reading.
Over 14?
I started reading.
18?
This
Jesus Christ.
I mean, this
what about high schoolers?
17.
14.
I'm more conservative than you are, though, I think.
But I think once you're like, you're feeling lusty feelings once you like start getting your period.
Oh,
and
man.
stuff.
I've been reading romance novels since I was like 13, but they were not as graphic as this. They were like,
I was
Daniel.
reading these. The first
Oh,
one,
I was not.
Oh, fun fact, dear listeners. The first Brotherhood book I ever read was Vicious's book.
Really?
Oh, yeah. Because my sister had been reading it. She had read the other ones, but that was the only one we had at the house. And I remember being so aroused, but also like, why am I aroused? He's like, because there's so much BDSM in there and like kinky shit. And I remember just being like so aroused, but also like under my covers aroused, you know, where I was like, I don't know if I should be aroused. Should people be aroused by this? I was like 15 probably.
Oh, okay. It's like every book I read, mine was like a slow progression, right? Because I found my first romance novel in my middle school library. So there wasn't like a whole bunch of access to other romance novels. So I read like every Danielle Steele book I could get my hands on, and any like probably any YA romance that they had in there. So they're remarkably tame. Danielle Steele does not get steamy, right? But then after I exhausted everything I could find in my middle school, I was like, well, I gotta go to the big library, and that was a smorgasbord. That's when I got the really good. That's when I got bodice rippers. That's when I got like some real dick penetration type stuff. You know what I mean? That's when I learned what oral was. Like there was like it was like heaven. I was like, oh, and same thing. Like your body starts feeling ways that you don't even know what's happening or why or how to release it or like what's
Oh yeah, I didn't know how to like release.
Yeah,
the tension.
you have to read another book.
I just remember being like,
but like the only way to chase the fix is to read another book. That's why I think romance novels are an addiction.
If you're coming into, so I recommend for sure reading this series in order.
Yeah.
Some series like it's not as important. In this series, I think it is actually really important because the development of all of the side characters leading up to their books really makes you excited for their books. So definitely start with the king, or actually it's not called the king, it's called Dark Lover, but start with Wrath the King, and work your way up. I just meant as a teenager, starting with the most graphic BDSM of the series.
Oh God, Bridget.
Was like a lot, but then I went and read them all and I was fine. But obviously I'm fine. So I think they can start reading at 14. I'm putting my foot down.
but she's not fine.
All right, dear listeners. That's all the time we have. Oh, no, it's not all the time. Shawnee's going to make one more point about me.
No, I'm going to make the point that reading this book in order is important because when you get to whoever the main character's book is, you do not have to sit through all the supposition, and you do not have to sit through all of the backstory being led up to and them trying to find ways of inserting it in the story. The story should just go. And I think that's the important reason.
I do really like that she doesn't recap anything.
No, there's no recap. Read the other book or
just accept that you don't know what's going on.
Yeah.
That's a great point.
I hate recap.
We're 3 chapters in. I'm like, oh my God, this is just nonsense. People should have just read the other book.
Yeah. Because what'll happen is...
Don't penalize me.
Exactly. Don't penalize me for being a avid reader of your books.
Yeah.
And that's what you were doing. And any good reader will read a book and realize that, oh, this must have a prequel or a sequel, and they'll go look for it.
Yeah, and I'm fine with the way that they set this one up where it tells you, like, this is 6 weeks, or, like, he's been searching for her for 6 weeks, and she was abducted outside of Mary's house, and you're like, oh, okay, cool, I know where we're at.
Yeah.
Like, that one sentence is enough to, like, get me back in.
And I like that because I feel like when I read her books, she assumes I'm an intelligent reader.
Yes.
And that's really lovely.
So go read it.
Mm-hmm.
Visit our website. If you have
more.
never purchased it before and you would like to purchase it, visit our website. We'll have a link. We get a teeny tiny kickback. And until then, may your books be your lover.
And your hand your best friend. Yowzers. Thanks for hanging in with us, romance readers. Head over to Instagram to continue chatting with us. We're super friendly. We want to cackle with you. We want to know what your favorite sex scene was. And we need more book recommendations. If you want to read along with us, go to our website, romanceataglance.com, to see what we're reading next. And we'll see you next podcast.